What's going on, everybody? Happy Tuesday. Gerald here with an update for you on the weather forecast. And it shouldn't be a crazy long video today, but we definitely do have a lot to talk about. So, one, we're going to talk about this kind of nicer weather that's set up shop for a lot of us here. And, unfortunately, not for everyone, though. So, we're going to talk about who's kind of still experiencing that stormy summertime weather. And we're also going to talk about who this weekend for our Memorial Day could unfortunately have some impacts to some of those outdoor plans. And it's kind of a bit of a tough forecast this weekend just because we're dealing with some really pesky low pressure off the southeast coast. And I do expect it to eventually kind of turn inland back towards the east coast. But the question is where, when, and how much rain will we be dealing with. So I'm going to try my best to break that down for you in today's video. But the good news is it's only Tuesday. So we have plenty of time to kind of figure things out here before we get to Memorial Day weekend, which is coming up. So, again, it's a morning video, so I apologize if that maybe messes up the routine a little bit for you, but this is just kind of the easiest time to get this done right now with the work schedule I have. So, I think with all that said, we can go ahead and get into the forecast. So, we're going to start with radar here, and you'll notice we do have some of that pesky rain still hanging on down here into kind of the Gulf Coast area here of the southeast. So really from Atlanta, Birmingham southbound through Jacksonville, Tallahassee, and the Gainesville area over back towards Pensacola and Baton Rouge. This kind of circle here still dealing with some showers and even some storms this morning. Unfortunately for you folks, this is likely going to continue throughout the day and maybe even longer than that. And that's one of the reasons we have this flood watch up here for sections of the Florida Panhandle as well as southwestern Georgia and extreme southeastern Alabama here is because of this overall pattern setup that we are dealing with. And we're going to talk about that overall setup here in a moment. Now, looking at today's high temperatures, a pretty pleasant day still for many of us, getting up into the 70s and low 80s for most of us here through the kind of the Midwest, the Ohio River Valley, even up through the Mid-Atlantic. And then a bit warmer as you get down here closer to the Gulf Coast, getting closer to that 90 range here in kind of those really more white colors, I guess, here on the map. Now, going into tonight, still a pretty pleasant May evening, only getting as low as about 60 for a lot of us here into the southeast, and then, kind of into the 50s for this kind of section north of there. And then really the only folks that are going to have, I'd say, a chilly night are up here into New England, where we will be getting down into the 40s and even isolated 30s up there into the higher peaks, and especially up towards kind of the Canadian border in Maine. Sorry, there's a fly flying around me. So now going ahead and looking at today's severe weather outlook, we do have a marginal risk here into Florida. So again, any of these storms that fire up for a place like Gainesville, Tallahassee, Pensacola, back down towards Orlando and Lake Okeechobee, we could definitely see some of the storms get kind of to that strong to severe status, but nothing off the charts here in terms of kind of the ingredients that we are working with. Now back out west towards Texas, we also have that risk of severe weather here into the panhandle of Texas and Oklahoma. So we'll also watch out for that, where I think we have more of a all hazards on the table back out towards that direction this afternoon. So I'm taking a look at our latest run for today's radar, and again, a couple of things to note that you'll probably want to watch out for here is this high pressure continuing to produce this wedge here into the mid-Atlantic. That's helping to keep us dry here and relatively cool. And that combined with kind of some low pressure down here near the Gulf, they're running into each other. So what's happening is we're getting air moving this way and we're getting air to move this way. And then once those two air masses hit and they collide, that air then begins to rise and eventually it hits that moist adiabatic rate where it eventually begins to precipitate. And that is why we're getting all of this rain in this section of the country today. So you'll notice that. And then also, of course, those severe storms back out west towards the Texas and Oklahoma panhandle where we have some low pressure influencing the pattern back that way. So as we move through this afternoon, again, you'll notice a lot of rain showers there through the Atlanta metro back down towards Macon and especially the Florida panhandle. And once we get into this evening, this is going to be really widespread heavy rain here. And I won't be surprised at all to see some flood warnings this evening here in that part of the country. Now, for you folks, really, I'd say in South Carolina, back up towards the mid-Atlantic, it should be relatively nice today. I would expect it to be pretty dry. Now, sections of South Carolina, I can't rule out some isolated showers and definitely some cloudier weather just because of where these air masses are kind of running into each other, helping to produce those clouds and precipitation. But most of that rain should stay confined to Alabama, Florida, and Georgia today, with kind of cloudy weather here into South Carolina. But once you get kind of North Carolina up through the Mid-Atlantic and through the Northeast, really nice weather today. And same story here for kind of the Midwest and Ohio River Valley. Now, as we go through tonight, still heavy rain down into the sections of the southeast, and also this evening getting those storms to fire up back out towards Texas. So watching that, where they could become severe and even produce a tornado or two, but especially large hail and damaging winds. But this rain down here into Georgia, Florida, still hanging on into the morning hours of tomorrow. You'll notice we still have widespread rain for just about the entire state of Georgia and much of Alabama going into tomorrow afternoon before it begins to kind of dry out a little bit going into tomorrow evening. Now, for you folks here in South Carolina, from Augusta to Columbia, up towards Spartanburg, down towards Charleston, so really the I-26 corridor kind of westbound, can't rule out some stray showers because of this overall pattern going into tomorrow, this evening as well. So, it's a really tough forecast there for that section of South Carolina, but nonetheless, I would definitely expect it to be at least relatively cloudy for you folks over the next 12 to 24 hours or so. Now, again, luckily, once we go kind of into tomorrow evening, some of that rain fizzles out a little bit before we get into Wednesday morning, and, we'll see what we can expect from Wednesday on as we get a little bit closer. All right, so now taking a look at the overall pattern, and again, we'll pick up where we left off here at Wednesday morning. What we're looking at here is still this big kind of area of elongated low pressure down here towards the southeast coast, and kind of just this boundary in general setting up. And at this point, we're going to have this high pressure that was helping to fuel in that drier air kind of, weaken a little bit and kind of move out of the picture. Now, the good news is we have more high pressure behind that come Wednesday and Thursday that is going to dive back down to the south, and that is going to help to reinforce us with some drier air. The unfortunate thing, though, is this boundary is still going to stay right where it's at. So this is where the Memorial Day weekend forecast comes into play and becomes a little bit tricky, as we do expect low pressure to kind of form a little bit more enclosed of a low pressure here along that boundary and really cause some rainy problems this weekend. So moving this ahead, going into Wednesday and Thursday, here's that next high pressure coming in and reinforcing the pattern with some drier air down here on the backside of the Appalachian chain. So really kind of in this general pattern like this is where that drier, nicer weather would be on Thursday and Friday. But this is also whenever I expect this low pressure to really kind of begin to develop over Florida and really begin to cause maybe some problems for folks outside of the Florida area. So we'll watch that, and as we move this into Friday, you'll notice again this low pressure really kind of begins to tighten up a little bit here off the southeast coastline, and as we move into this weekend, this could potentially work its way inland. So this is the latest GFS run for this Saturday afternoon. Again, right here during Memorial Day weekend, and we have widespread rain here into the Carolinas as this low pressure kind of begins to develop and works its way inland, and then continues to kind of ride up the East Coast a little bit, and just continuing to bring widespread showers for much of the East Coast from kind of Saturday through Memorial Day and potentially even after that. And this would also signal a pattern change as a whole, and you'll notice as I move this ahead, that rain really returns to the East Coast forecast in the long range if this does play out like the GFS is suggesting here. Another way to show this here is the dew point map, and again, over really the next couple of days, relatively nice, comfortable air over sections of the East Coast and the Mid-Atlantic, again outside of Georgia and Florida here. Before we then get, again, another reinforcement of that drier air, and we have a very nice Friday, I think, for many of us, and potentially even a nice early Saturday before you'll notice these dew points creep in with that low pressure here into the southeast potentially during this weekend, and that, of course, could produce some widespread rain, and we'll even have to watch out for maybe a bit of an isolated severe weather threat back out here to the east of that low pressure. We'll definitely watch out for that and see if that unfolds like maybe some of the models are suggesting. Now, another way to show this, and I really like this map, this is all of our Euro ensemble members, or the EPS, kind of thrown together to make an average of where they think this low pressure will go this weekend. So, again, you'll notice as we move this ahead, this is that reinforcing high pressure that we were talking about on Thursday and Friday, and you'll notice we still have this boundary here setting up, and this is that low pressure beginning to form on it come Thursday and Friday. So, as we get into kind of Thursday afternoon here, you can see the models agree pretty well on some kind of low pressure here off the southeast coast, and as we bring this into kind of Friday afternoon, this is whenever we get some divergence here. So, the models have it anywhere from kind of off the coast of Virginia Beach all the way down to Miami. So, again, this is where the forecast becomes a little more difficult, is any of these little dots could be right. So, no one dot is, created better than the other here. So, this is what we're going to have to watch out for. And again, as we get into this weekend, the models actually do begin to converge this a little bit better, that we do expect this somewhere off the Carolina coastline, probably more likely the kind of right in between the Carolinas, really near the Myrtle Beach, Wilmington area. And eventually, it kind of moves inland and just kind of meanders around for a little bit is what the models kind of see here happening. So, again, I think now through really kind of Friday will be really nice for a lot of us here in the mid-Atlantic and through the Northeast as well as the Ohio River Valley, but once we get into this weekend, that mid-Atlantic area could get, unfortunately, kind of their parade stomped on a little bit by this low pressure, and then that would also likely signal a longer-term pattern change into more of a kind of overall wet and cooler pattern. So that's definitely what we're watching out for here in the medium to long range. If you have any questions that I didn't answer in this video, feel free to ask me in the comments. But with that said, hope you have a great rest of your Tuesday, and I will see you all tomorrow.